I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to our work session this evening. Welcome to our guests and our friends and those who are familiar, our council here. And we are here tonight for a wonderful presentation, our strategic plan. And for TV viewers, at least, they're going to present and lay out the strategic plan for the town of Edmonston. So I want everybody to grab hold. And it's also an interactive time. I know we have one resident here. It's also an interactive time for our council and our residents if they have any questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sam White, and you can go for it.
Good evening, Mayor Gant. No, that's very good. Mayor Gant and member of the council. My name is Samuel White. I'm a senior planner with the Community Planning Division, Prince George's Planning Department, and I'm also the project manager of the Town of Edmonston Economic Development Strategy, and thank you for allowing us to do our workshop tonight. The agenda will be as follows. We will have welcomes, which I just did the welcome. We'll have team introduction with the consultant team. We will also talk about how did we get here. It's been a long process. Economic development and visioning statements and goals, and economic development strategy plan, which we will discuss. We also, at the end, will have a discussion, and we also will be doing a Q&A. At this time, I will have the project team come up, introduce themselves, and we're going to start the presentation. So Richard Glitch, he's the project director from Jacob Francis Institute, and Agnes Altimo, she's also from Altimo and Associates. Richard?
We're going to switch back and forth, so we're both up here. So let's go to the next one. Let's kind of begin with how did we get here? As you all know, this has been a long process. We've been working in the town for a little over a year. So it kind of started in August of 2021 when we did the tour of the town with Ron. In January, we presented the first work session where we gave the economic background, all the data on the town. And in February of 2022, we did the first community visioning workshop where we got the input from the community. In March, then we met with you all again to kind of go over the visioning and plan. And then today, we're going to be presenting what we've come up with for the economic development strategy. So we'll begin with the economic development vision statement. And really, this came out of the community engagement sessions and the work with you all. So what is the vision to guide your economic development strategy? The town of Edmonston supports a vibrant, diversified, sustainable local economy. I mean, the issue of sustainability with the eco efforts that you have in this town are very important. That meets the needs of the community. Business activity in the town's commercial areas is consistent with the high quality of life desired by residents. As you all know, we've had a lot of issues that we've talked about in terms of the competing uses between the residential and industrial uses here in the town. So we wanted to reflect that here in the vision. And the town capitalizes on location and natural amenities to support its economic development goals. I mean, the town is very well located in a great location with a lot of assets to support economic development. I'm just going to go over the beginnings of these. You've got them in front of you. But so we came up with 4 economic development goals to kind of implement this vision. So the town of Edmonston promotes a healthy, diversified economy and supports local businesses and entrepreneurship and fosters an environment that helps these businesses thrive. So again, friendly to business. Edmonston continues to develop in an ecologically sustainable way, again, building on the environmental goals that your town has done wonderfully in terms of implementing. It's recognized for its quality of life, diverse employment and housing opportunities, safety, and respect for its diversity of its people, so maintains its status as a diverse and welcoming community. And its commercial properties are well maintained and attractive to employers and creative entrepreneurs who wish to operate in the town. So again, you're kind of upgrading the appearance of some of your commercial and industrial properties. So those were the 4 economic development goals. So again, we started with the vision. What are you aiming to become? Became your goals. So what are the goals that you're going to try to implement to make the town achieve its economic development vision? We then came up with 12 economic development action items across 4 priority areas. Again, these came out of the community visioning and work that we did with you all. So priority area 1 is approve the appearance of industrial areas. Again, that was made very clear starting in August when we went on the tour with Ron. He beat that into our heads. Priority area 2, diversify the types of businesses. So one of the issues that people talk about is the issue that there's you have a lot of industrial uses, you have a lot of commercial uses, but you don't have a lot of retail or other types of things that the town residents desire. Priority 3 is enhance the town's identity and connectedness. As we talked about, this town is incredibly well located with tremendous environmental and recreational assets, so improving its connectedness, but it is separated from the surrounding community, so how do you improve that? And then promote eco-friendly development. So what we did, and you have it in there in front of you, so is we've developed a matrix with these 12 economic development action items. You know, in the matrix, it has the priority areas. So which of those 4 priority areas does the recommendation go to? What is the action item? Who takes the action? The budget impact and the time frame for doing the type of work. So that's, again, how to read this matrix. Now, we're going to go over each of these. You're not going to be able to make sense of this thing or even really see it up here, but we're going to go over each of the 12 action items individually. So we're now going to go, unless you have any kind of questions about, before we dive into the meat of the presentation, do you want to wait till questions at the end, Mayor, or do you want to open it up during?
You can open it up during, because sometimes I even forget what I wanted to ask if we go all the way through. So
hopefully we don't forget
whenever
the
you
answers.
want to stop to ask questions or.
Do you want us to, so before we jump into each of the recommendations, do you want to
Sure,
open
sure.
up? Are there any questions? Well, good.
See?
I mean, we've
See?
obviously,
Got past.
we've either done it well or we've stunned you. So, so we're going to go, Agnes, and I work together on the plan, so we're going to go tag team on this.
Okay.
And so this was one of her recommendations that she came up with. I'm going to let her talk a little bit about this one.
Okay. So as Richard mentioned, we heard a lot about wanting to improve the appearance of existing industrial areas. But before I get into that, I really wanted to say that I'm honored that I'm part of your first live meeting. This is pretty amazing. And I also wanted to say that I've been impressed by the spirit of the town council and the resourcefulness of your town manager. You've taught us a lot, and your enthusiasm has carried us a long way as well.
Thank you. Appreciate
So
that.
the first thing we wanted to mention is dealing with enforcement of existing regulations. Now, as you well know, Edmonston is part of the larger county, and your regulations are really the county's regulations. So there's not that much you can do on your own, and it really means you have to work with the county and figure out what are the regulations that they have that you can enforce better. And I know your town manager is absolutely, completely on top of all that and knows exactly what the situation is. So yes, enforce existing regulations. You've done a lot. There are probably a few little nuggets here and there in the Prince George's County codes and ordinances that you can still discover, but it's one of the basic fundamental recommendations. But at the same time, you can look for new enforcement mechanisms. As part of the upcoming Port Town sector plan, there's an opportunity to ask for new mechanisms, new tools. Now, the thing that happens when you're part of a county is that you don't get special regulations just for your town. Whatever is passed, whatever zone is created by the county or whatever tools are created apply to the whole county. So they obviously have to take into account what everybody else needs as well. But I do think the port sector plans is a great opportunity to ask for new things that you wish you had and you don't have right now. For example, maybe changing some zones or finding a way to make certain zones more restrictive, which would again be countywide, but at least you could use that, or come up with some kind of special exception mechanisms. So the lead on this is probably your town manager, but you're going to have to work very closely with all your county departments and staff. So.
Police chief too.
And police chief, absolutely. Speaking of enforcement, you're right on top of that.
He operates the code compliance officers.
Code compliance.
In the police department. So they're the great thing is they've already started establishing that relationship with the county.
Great.
Based on what you were saying in your recommendations earlier, so we're excited to continue to grow that.
Excellent. Let's see. So the next recommended action was to carry out some beautification activities. This is not to say that the town has to do all of these things. I think we're envisioning you working with various property owners and encouraging them to do some improvements to their buildings. But some of the things you can do is gateway signage. When it comes to murals or colorful walls or improving windows or facades, that's really up to the property owner, but working individually, one-on-one, and coming up with things that they can do will be helpful in making things look better. Improving lighting is probably a town function, making sure that there's good street lighting. You may need help from the county on that as well, but at least you can point out where you need it. Improving curb cuts and intersections, and most importantly, landscaping. And you've already done some great landscaping things along Decatur Street, and then some of the property owners have done a little bit of landscaping around their industrial properties. So there's a lot that can be done, and it doesn't have to be super expensive.
The chief had a call or had a conversation. You want to share that with one of the business owners from over on Buchanan?
Oh, yes. So we had a conversation in reference to changing the fences on Buchanan Street. So that way that it's like a privacy fence, and the artists, once we put the fence up, they could come and they can paint on those fences. Also, we can change the front area where they have grass on Buchanan Street as you going down Buchanan towards Englewood, and make one side all asphalt, but then to make up for the loss of grass, on the other hand side, put all grass, benches, trees, and another, I think, 2 planters we said. So I think it looked nice.
And the property owner is
Yeah,
amenable to doing all that. That's great.
The property owner was the one that gave me the idea.
Super. That sounds like a winner. All right, great. I'll hand it over to Richard for number 4.
All right, so this recommendation was really pushed by the initial project manager over at the planning department, Zach, who has since left. But it's really an appropriate one that has been used in other industrial areas around the country, for areas like yours that have, very, interesting industrial uses next to residential uses. So some ideas that came up were really kind of, I didn't move it, was explore the feasibility of creating either a business improvement district or industrial main street. So what are the differences between these two things? A business improvement district is more of a formalized structure. You have to get 80% of the property owners to agree to do it. You create special taxing authorities. They have lots of them in the county. The county's first one, or the state's first one, was actually in Laurel. We're at the Main Street, I have to remember. But there's lots of business improvement districts. I've not been able to find an industrial business district in Maryland, but there are many: Oklahoma, LA, Brooklyn. So these have been done in areas. A less intensive issue would be an industrial main street. Now, I'm really unclear whether this really applies to Maryland, because you have to, there are no industrial main streets in program, but the Main Street program here in Maryland is more of a grant program. You don't have taxing authority, you don't have the extra assessment. So it's mostly a way of bringing in external grant resources to the companies that participate. Given what you want in terms of improving connectivity, which we address later, and also improving the look and style of your industrial areas, the business improvement district would be kind of more akin to that, but again, a very high barrier to meet in terms of getting 80% of businesses to agree to that. The steps to do this would be to meet with property owners to see if they're interested. Explore, is a main street even feasible? You have to have 1,000 households, you're just about at that level. Also would have to be the whole town would be a main street. If you decide to go that route, you need to do a feasibility assessment. So there is cost to that in terms of the outreach is free if they're interested, but then you have to do a feasibility assessment. There's a formalized process for creating a bid here in Maryland. In doing so, you'd have to work with the county planning department, the economic development department. As would be immediate, this is not something in terms of effort. You can't do this tomorrow. It's going to take time to reach and think about it. Now we're switching over to the second strategic, sorry.
Because we're going to talk now about diversifying the types of business, would those would these be mutually exclusive? Would you, like if we're gonna be trying to diversify the businesses, maybe we don't have to worry so much about then trying to create an industrial district? I don't know if that makes sense, but just.
No, I understand exactly what
Like,
you're saying. So the question is in
If we can diversify, maybe we don't have to.
I think we're going to get into a little bit of that when we talk about the zoning issue and the new permissible uses, especially in your industrial area. That way, I get twisted. I'm geographically challenged. I just wanted to make sure I pointed to the correct area. So we're going to get to that a little bit more in zoning, but the issue is if you having talked to all your major property owners, the industrial uses they have are in high demand. They have low vacancy. They're able to, fill them, at will. So I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of interest in changing from those types of uses. As we talk about a little bit in the report, and as we talked about in our earlier presentations, a lot of these uses are getting pushed out of other areas, especially DC, as redevelopment. So really, it's diversifying there might not be the easiest place right now, but there are other options that we're going to talk about in zoning and a little bit here. So I'm going to go back to, so again, in terms of diversifying the types of businesses, you do have, you have properties, the go-kart track, you have other types of properties that can be, redeveloped into more, resident-facing retail businesses. So really the steps there are working with the property owners. It's a low-cost effort to do this. You would have to do some type of feasibility, especially if you want to do any type of zoning, so some type of a market analysis. But I think a challenge you're going to face in there is while the town itself isn't particularly well served in retail, about 2% of the space is used for retail uses. You're on Kenilworth Avenue, you're next to Hyattsville. There's a surplus of retailer around here. So it might be a tough sell, for wholesale changes, but there are certainly areas and ways to improve it. In the near term, there's other things you could do, kind of like food cart pods, that food truck pods that serve the industrial areas. It could also serve the residents. There are things to kind of look at this. But again, working with really one of the great things this town has is you have three major property owners. You have lots of other property owners, but you have three large-scale ones, and you have a very strong and positive relationship with one, which isn't always the case doing this in other places. So, that's our recommended action item 5. Again, working with the Economic Development Department would probably be the key external partner, and it's a relatively middle cost option.
Richard, we worked for a number of years, 3 brothers. They own
Across
yes,
across the way.
they're on Kenilworth. The 3 brothers building itself, that's the strip mall, is in Bladensburg, but the parking lot's in Edmonston. And he owned, the family owns a great deal of land along Kenilworth on that side and around that. They worked with EDC for a number of years to try to redevelop that. But they were too specific on what they wanted. He didn't want competing businesses, obviously. He didn't want residential because he didn't want cars taking up his parking spaces for his businesses. And he wanted a pharmacy, but there was a pharmacy down the road in Riverdale Park, and there was a pharmacy down the road in that way, and so the demographics didn't align for that. So, and then, like you said, the new owner of the go-kart track, he's excited about potentially changing that, and he is, and our biggest problem has been getting connected well with EDC.
Yes.
So we just need to focus on that.
Well, we just the county's economic development strategy is out. I'm one of the principal authors of it, and Interbeltway and placemaking are 2 of the placemaking strategies that we really do push in the county strategy. So again, I know it is a priority for the county executive to work on all Interbeltway. I think the target right now is more some of the distressed ones, more than the ones that are aspirational. But again, I think the county, I can't speak for them. It is a focus area in their new strategy.
Okay, great, thank you.
Now the hard one.
Yeah, so now we get to zoning and land use, which is always a hot button issue in every community. But it's also fascinating. So you recently had a couple of properties rezoned as part of the county-wide zoning reevaluation process that concluded recently, right about when we finished this started this study. So the question is, what do those rezonings mean? I'm talking about the very northern industrial tip, which was rezoned to neighborhood activity center, and then some properties at the west end of Decatur Street. I'm getting challenged like Richard here, that were changed to an IE zone, which theoretically would allow more mixed use than what's there now. But to me, the big question is, what does the town really want to have as its land uses? And the forum for making your wishes known is, again, the Port City sector plan. But between the plan and now, you as a town have to decide, what do we want to have happen to the northern industrial area? Do we want a town center on Decatur Street? You're going to need to talk to each other and to your citizens and really see what's the fabric of the town that you're envisioning in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years. I was surprised to see the NAC zoning at the northern end. You have a pretty well-maintained industrial area up there with an NAC zoning that gives that owner possibly an incentive to redevelop to something that might include multifamily housing. So the question is that what you want? Or do you want to preserve a decent industrial area? We can't make those decisions for you. What our recommendation is really to evaluate what you want in those key areas so that when the sector plan rolls around, you can either request complementary measures that will provide more incentives, or you can say, no, that's not what we want, and let's take those away. And we're just here to say you need to study that. Another option is, do you want to preserve, you have a huge portion of your housing is single-family detached houses. Is that, you want to preserve all of those, or do you want to make room for some townhouses or multifamily? Again, that's a local decision. You have to determine what you want. But it's definitely worth studying it and making those decisions. So the only thing I can really say is to have those conversations and to work closely with the county planning department to see what would be needed based on what you want.
So the area that she's talking about that's zoned NAC is Mr. Martin's large and warehousing and industrial that's on the north side of 46th Avenue, is it at the and Lafayette. That whole intersection, all of that is NAC, and then the area she's talking about, IE, is at 46th and Decatur. Mm-hmm. So those are the options there that she's talking about.
Yeah, for example, at the 46th and Decatur area, if you wanted more retail, you could potentially take advantage of some mixed-use zoning. And if somebody redevelops, there might be room for retail. Right now, it's very hard for you to even have a coffee shop on Decatur because it's mostly zoned residential. So zoning is really important to what the future community looks like, and getting it right is really important.
Sam, do you know is the Port Town Sector Plan update scheduled for 23?
I think it's 2023 or 24.
Right.
We are looking at areas now as far as fleet planning, trying to get an idea of how we're going to move forward, but I think it's 23 or 24.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at. So that would be a good opportunity to revisit that. And keep in mind when they rezoned it from NAC, that was a mixed-use zone anyway. So they reduced mixed-use zone previously, and they went back to an industrial, and they kept part of it as NAC. It's a neighborhood activity center, so that's why you see it further up.
Okay, moving on to connectivity and access to transit. When I first started looking at transportation available to the town, what struck me is that it seemed like everything was kind of wrapping around the borders but not going through the town. So you didn't have like a local bus service that would take you somewhere. So you do have some really good things around you. You're going to get a Purple Line stop, not too far away, and the MARC station is not too far away, but they're not exactly in the town. So we're recommending looking at working with either the Prince George's County bus service or WMATA, and looking to see if there could be a route that goes along Decatur Street with at least one bus stop there. We're also looking at where are there barriers. For example, again, in that NAC area, there's a half a block that's not connected, and you can't really go through toward Riverdale Park or toward the MARC station, even though it seems like you'd want to, but there's a parcel there that's undeveloped and blocked off. So are there any ways to unblock that? If not for automobiles, at least for pedestrian and bicycle traffic. So it's another thing to look into. In a more,
We met recently with Riverdale Park.
you did, okay,
Mayor Gant did. And,
Okay.
They actually are proposing that we do a bike path, a pedestrian path, and rain gardens through that area
excellent.
to connect then on to the MARC station, and they're totally in favor, Craig.
It'll be history.
Yes, focusing on the Plummer family and telling the story, because they're important to not only Riversdale Plantation but also to our beginnings, and so it seems like a great project that will really help with the connectivity. They weren't interested necessarily in putting the street
Right.
to create the traffic, but they are excited about the bike and the walking.
I think that's terrific progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super. And then we had one longer term option, which may actually not even really be possible, but it's to study options for another crossing of the railroad to get you better access to Hyattsville Art District.
And the great
Now.
news on that is,
Yes.
you just played right into it there. One of our council members happens to be close friends with one of the council members from Hyattsville, and I had conversations with the Public Works Director at Hyattsville about how we could look at opening up. These folks came up with, there used to be a tunnel under the railroad tracks.
Okay.
It closed many years ago, but they brought it up and thought, could we reopen that tunnel for connectivity? And so when I had conversations with the Public Works Director, they said, well, just so happens there's a grant program from the Department of Transportation, Federal Department of Transportation, that would provide pedestrian access across railroad tracks.
Wow.
And that we would like to figure out how we can connect to Edmonston and bring Edmonston back and forth. So the grant program is a 5-year program. You can apply for the design money, and then and the study and the feasibility, and then you can go in for the construction dollars from the same grant program. So
That's awesome.
this feeds right in. And at the same time, the mayor and council hired Pannoni to do a traffic study for the 46th Avenue Industrial Park.
Okay.
So Pannoni's studying egress, ingress, how we change that intersection at 46th and Decatur, how we get better parking, where we add parking. That study's in process right now. So we didn't sit down after you started sending these thoughts and ideas out, and the people in here in the community spoke up, and the council thought of these things. We started moving. So just to give you an update on those.
You guys are awesome.
two
That's all I can say. It's like, wow. That's fantastic. Well, good. You're halfway there. You've already done half the plan. That's super. Let's see. So, this thing keeps jumping. Why am I on 5 now? All right. So, an easier thing is creating a distinct and recognizable identity for Edmonston. I have to admit, as someone who lives in Virginia, I didn't know where Edmonston was when I first started this project. Now I do, and I'm very glad I've discovered your town. But you're not really that well known outside the very local area. I think it would be important to be better known. There's a couple ways of doing it, well, 3 ways of doing it. One is through branding exercise. Second is through some placemaking activities. And third is by creating some events that become regionally known. So branding, a lot of it is, what's your slogan, what's your image? Port City could be a brand, or Eco City. You've already done a lot of work on the eco side, so maybe that's where you go with it. It's kind of something where you brainstorm.
We have a new brand.
You have a new brand already.
We do. And it is a bridging community is the theme, and the E with a very large E has got a leaf in it for the environment. So it's
Perfect.
all about the environment and a bridging community. So
So you've tied together all those elements already.
yes, so there's a new sign already at 52nd and Decatur
Okay.
that's doing that. The sign out front here is getting refaced into that. The banners are going up after the first of the year, and so yes.
Super. So the next thing is to promote that brand.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Your logo here, and I say Bridging the Community, I think they already have it.
Yeah.
I don't say anything.
Yeah. And on top of that, the mayor and council brought on a social media person part-time this summer, and so Asha's mission in life is to sell us and brand us, and she one of her reels, for instance, one of her reels that she did up from an event got 3,500
That's pretty good.
responses, and so it's all happening.
Good.
All happening fast.
So do you
and
have a
furious.
Facebook and an Instagram and a Twitter and
Yes.
all of those?
Yes.
We listen to you from.
Amazing. I need to follow you on everything. I will. Placemaking, I know you're doing a lot of this already, but, like benches, trash cans, plantings, bollards, wayfinding signs, pattern book, sort of things that are the same all over town, so you know that you're within Edmonston and not somewhere else. I think you're doing a lot of that. And then events, creating a unique event that people will come to from all over the region, whether it's an art festival or a turkey trot for Thanksgiving, which I know other people are doing, but, something that's kind of unique and speaks to to what the town is about. And I know you've got some great ideas there too, so I won't go into that any further. So that's time to switch it over to Richard.
So really, just one of the issues that came up, even though this is an economic development strategy, was through some of the community engagement, the issue was really improving the amenities available. In this, we talk about the need for kind of an area for the town to meet, in addition to the town hall here that has more space. So we talk about that there. So, I think you're doing some of this, you're exploring all these issues. But again, even though this is an economic development strategy, a lot of the residents really did feel that there needs to be a here, more than the town hall, so a place to meet. So, the recommended action item here is collect resident feedback. What do they want? Explore the feasibility of creating, other neighborhood amenities. Is there an area to have community space here? Who would do this? Again, we're creating your job work for you here. This is a relatively expensive proposition, if you wanted to do something. And again, working with the county planning department and recreation department. And again, some of this you can do right away. Some of this takes longer, getting the space. So again, that was just something that came out, even though it's a strategy, the residents had really talked about this.
Sam actually facilitated a meeting with the park and planning folks to talk about a rec center and how that could potentially become like a town center concept. Unfortunately, the park and planning folks weren't receptive to that because of the way that the land was purchased and are obtained, and doesn't allow it for that kind of thing. But it was a great discussion, and talking about what you're talking there, creating that certain space where and the interesting thing is our little Veterans Park, it's not our land, it's Park and Planning's land, but we developed it, and it's right at the corner of Taylor and Decatur, and it has become kind of the hub for the community because it has a food bank, it has a little library, it has an art gallery, it has benches, it's along the trail, and people, you can go by there any time of the day, and there's somebody there doing whatever that might be. And many of the programs the mayor and council do, they either end or start there, and so people gather. Don't you all think that same thing? Yeah. So we understand this. We're limited a little bit, like you said, with space and trying to be creative of where we find that space and the price tag that comes with it. But it's a great idea.
Back to me. All right. So this next section was actually developed by one of my employees, Edith Kelleher, who couldn't be here tonight. So I'm not as talkative about these points as she would have been, but I'll do my best. So the next couple of things we're going to talk about are the eco-friendly or eco-district, and you had already done so much of this before we even started, so there's a lot to build on. And I even see there's some green team flyers out there. I mean, so the basic recommendation is to keep involving the residents so that it's not just the town and the government doing things, but how can the residents build on the strong base that you've already started? Some of it is education. Some of it is giving them some supplies, like, do they know how to use rain barrels? Where can they get them? Do they have those things? Community gardens. Can you have events where you sell native plants? A green expo or instructions on how to green your home. Composting, taking advantage of the county composting program. So there are a lot of things that residents can do to contribute in addition to the major efforts you've already made.
Can I update you on that too?
Sure. Maybe I shouldn't have come tonight. You've already done it all.
We won 2 national awards just recently, and one of them was for our community garden and Councilmember Johnson's coordination effort of that, and the second was for our environmental efforts. So we were recognized by the American Bloom, a national organization that competing against other communities across the nation, all different sizes. So we're really, really happy that. We wrote a grant in partnership with Eco City Farms, we'll know at the end of this month, from USDA, to do food composting door to door.
Oh, great.
So the compost would be collected and then used by Eco City Farms at their Bladensburg farm, at their farm here, and at their new Watkins Park farm. And so we're really excited, and our fingers crossed that we'll get that. So those are those are 3 new projects since the study was going, and you all have been in the community. So
Excellent. Let's see. So the next goes to sort of from the resident level up to the kind of business level. How can we create a defined eco-district and attract eco-friendly businesses? I'm not sure what the status is on Community Forklift.
yeah, it's a tough one. The
Yeah.
Washington Gas has, I think,
They're not-
indicated they're not renewing their lease. And last conversation we had was they were working with them to try to find a location, but they need, 100,000 square feet, and the pricing, and they're working with EDC in a big way and trying to solve that. But yeah,
Because that was a really cool resource.
it is. And
Yeah.
it's not looking particularly good, at least in the conversation that we had a couple weeks ago.
We just encourage you to keep up the work and try to retain them in some fashion if you can. Work with the EDC on identifying and attracting eco-friendly businesses. And, did I move again?
There we go.
Sorry about that. And then finally, look at if it makes sense to create a particular geographic area that would be known as the eco-district that people could then visit and maybe learn things about new ways of renewable energy or whatever aspect they're interested in, kind of a demonstration site. So we move on to our final recommendation. Back to Richard.
Now, one of the things, as I talked about, that really kind of stood out in the town is you do have a proactive and positive relationship with the business community. You have 3 major property owners, all of whom work with the town, are willing to work with the town, work with the county, or willing to work with the county. That's not often or always the case. And one of the other kind of issues that really kind of stood out was that your resident base, in terms of the skills and jobs they have, are very well aligned with the jobs that are in the park, but only about 1-2% of residents, 1-2% of jobs. You have about as many jobs as you have residents in the town, are held by the residents. So, one of the chief assets for economic development is access to workers. So, I mean, if you could build a little bit further with your relationship, not only with the property owners, but with some of the local businesses, in terms of helping them find employees from the town, that is mutually reinforcing in terms of economic development. If you can help people find workers, especially in the trades that are highly prevalent in the industrial areas here and are also highly prevalent in your population base, you're making the place more attractive to business and more attractive to residents. So that's we're kind of building on this proactive relationship. as you implement the strategy and kind of adding, you already do it in terms of land use, zoning, beautification, rain gardens, the things you've tried to do and are trying to do with the industrial areas. But if you could add a workforce component, work with employee Prince George's, Walter Rogers, other types of things to publicize. You could have a job posting, on your website, job posting here for people who come to the town hall, job posting site on your website. Get the, you can collect both resumes from people and job postings from the companies, and again, try to do a little bit of matchmaking there, just in terms of connecting people with what's going on. Because again, there's very rarely do you have such a strong alignment between what the jobs are and what the people are in a community. So there's really ways to capitalize on that in a mutually reinforcing way. And again, working with the business base in terms of implementing this strategy and the other key elements, related to zoning, beautification. And clearly, if you wanted to go the bid route, business improvement district, you'd have to get 80% of them on board. So those are our 12 action items. Do you want to say you're doing this one already too? Okay, good. We can end on a new idea. So we've given, this is the outline of the strategy. You've seen the early parts of the findings. So we've given the report to the planning department. So the next step is to work with them and you all on revising the document and getting it through the publications design in the county and getting it back to you. So the timing of this really depends on when we get comments back from you, comments back from the planning department. But end of the year might be ambitious, but we're shooting for it. So.
Yeah, we are shooting for the end of the year. I will be sending you a draft copy so you can review it. We have to come up with the time that we want your responses back. Once we get your responses back, it's an inner office review that we have to do. I have to review it, project facilitator, the supervisor, division chief, then it goes to publications. That takes a while. You have holidays coming up, and plus we're understaffed. So when you cross the I's and dot the T's, we want to give you enough time to actually review it. So after you review it, we get your comments, then we'll try to move it forward. But we're looking at, hopefully, I would think next year. Very early next year. Dan will probably be taking over because I'll be retiring at the end of the year. So it's going to be in good hands. They have done a lot of work, which you will see. I probably will send it out probably tomorrow because I already got a draft copy. But I'll talk with staff and see when they want to do it. But it will be coming out this week, so you can look forward to it and just sit down with some coffee and
read those statistics and the tables.
Exactly. It is a lot of information in there. There's a lot of tables in there. It is going through publication, so it's going to change slightly. It's going to be more graphic than anything, but most of the content in there is going to be there. And let me say, you're already doing some of the work already, which is the first time I worked on a study, and some of the recommendation has moved forward, which is the vision of the community and the council and the mayor. So that's where we are.
The business owners I know you talk to and spend a lot of time with, did they have a lot of suggestions about what they wanted to see, particularly? Or were they somewhat satisfied, I guess, with what efforts the town was doing so far?
Satisfaction with the town is very consistent.
Yeah.
There was nearly uniform. I would say, it's hard because there's only 3 of them. It's easy to figure out who said what in the
Right.
anonymity. But I would say, one area of possible disconnect is the issue that they're very, happy with the uses they have, and your residents
Right.
aren't necessarily very happy with the uses they have. So the question is, how do you bring those more into alignment, which is again the question of, can you enforce and do some things that get
Well-
rid of some of the nuisance, and can you do beautification?
Although those 3 owners tend to be, higher up on the scale than the smaller owners. So
But like
there's not as much enforcement you have to do for
I
those
met
3.
recently. I met a person that they potentially have a small business that they would be interested in. They own a brewery in the district, and they're looking for maybe expansion, and in a different way with maybe like a coffee shop kind of concept versus a full scale restaurant. But he says, what about your community? And I'm thinking, where do we have a space or where do we have a building that could accommodate that kind of thing? And it's a tough one.
Generally, those are
really
pretty
tough.
well received by communities, though. I mean,
They are.
people
I mean, the
are
community
looking
would
for,
love to
for
have it. I
breweries
know they
with a
would.
tasting room or something like that.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
yeah,
they
that's
would
a
be
good
really
thing.
excited.
And in the county, a lot of them are located in industrial areas. I mean, the Calvert Brewing over in, I guess it'd be South County with south of Bowie. The ones in Howard County, Hysteria and others are all in industrial
Yeah.
areas.
Alexandria has two, but they're in industrial areas as well.
So again, I think
Because those
that
warehouse structures lend themselves to that use.
So maybe Mr. Mark.
the question is, do you have enough parking? That's the
Yeah,
that's
that's
the harder situation because you're going to probably need minimum of 25 to 50 spots to host one of them.
And yeah, we had a collective market that was coming that was going to be in the industrial area, but the thing that, and eventually, well, COVID hit, but the eventual thing that stopped them was the parking. We tried a bunch of different avenues. We tried leasing space. We tried a lot of things. So yeah, it's going to take some really creative answers for that. But with our traffic and parking study being done, that they potentially will identify some solutions maybe too. So good, thank you. I'm excited, as you can tell. So sorry.
We're building over here.
We found our coffee shop.
Oh, okay,
We found
all right.
parking.
All right.
We're trying to find where we can have this little brew room.
Where my brewery can go?
Well, I'll just have to walk to that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I can't find mine. I wrote one. I can't find it, so if someone else has.
I was just curious about just how volatile the housing market had gotten and whether that changes anything, or is it just because it was sort of happening so across the board that it's nothing unique to our area, and so.
Yeah,
Is
the
that
housing
not
slowdown
changing?
is everywhere because of, there are a lot of factors, but obviously the rise in mortgage rates has really affected resales. But it's not unique to here, it's everywhere. You're probably gonna see some price drops, but I thought that your housing market was fairly stable because you have these single-family homes that are, that have families living in them and they're not really picking up and moving and going somewhere else right now. And there are fewer listings, houses are staying on the market longer, so people who are in a house right now are not really looking to sell. They're gonna kind of hunker down and keep what they have. So I don't really see a lot of volatility in housing here.
We had one house recently sold in a week, but I noticed now we have 2 homes on the market that's been on the market now for a little bit longer time frame. They're approaching a month and
Yeah,
maybe
I mean, last spring, houses were selling in a day or two, right?
Right.
Now we're at about 30 days, but
Yeah.
I think
So I
it's gonna
think
get
that-
even longer.
I don't see the price necessarily changing
The
a lot
price is
yet,
not changing,
but I do see the length of time
Right.
maybe changing, just even for us.
right? And you'll see number of units sold are gonna decrease year over year. But it's temporary, housing markets always come back. It might take a year or two, but they do come back.
And you're well located in terms of, with Hyattsville popping, Purple Line coming in, your price point is already relatively low compared to neighboring jurisdictions. So there, again, clearly it's going to be an uncertain time for the next couple of 6 months, year and a half. But clearly the long-term potential is high for this whole part of the town.
Which in a sense, that gives you breathing room, to figure out what you really want to do with the town's land use and to get prepared for this upcoming study. Because you're not fighting market forces that are making you go in certain directions that aren't necessarily where you want to go.
The one person that sold their home in a week, she said when she was doing research of where she wanted to move to, we were the only green community in Prince George's County in terms of crime. Everywhere else
Wow.
had red or yellow, but Edmonston
Oh, color green.
All right.
was green, so we want to keep it green.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is, yeah. One of the questions I had was action item 9. Explore feasibility of creating, supporting development of neighborhood amenities. And I was wondering if, I know from time to time, Mr. Barnes and I talk about the rec center and the extension of it. You know, Mr. Barnes, when we talked about putting a deck on the back, those kind of things. Is that what you're sort of referring to? Or,
Yeah.
or even, we talked sometime about, well, just recently, about extending or building up our town hall so that we could have a room, a party room, or whatever you want to call it. Those are the things you're referring to. Because we
Right.
don't have,
Some kind of a community space
yeah.
where people can gather.
gather, right.
That's not an outdoor space, I mean, something covered.
We, we,
That's exactly what I'm talking about,
We made the rec center a Wi-Fi connectivity so that we can look at, Avery's been focusing on trying to figure out a way we could do a Wi-Fi cafe where we're doing classes and we're doing having students and
Right.
children come in,
Study hall.
study
Yeah.
and do those kinds of things. So the mayor and council are excited about that. And then, building a patio out with pergola and maybe some way to extend the use of the space that's there. Plus, they're looking at the town hall here, like the mayor said, to explore.
Eventually, we'll have our walking track.
And our walking track with Rod can, yeah.
With the rec center, so that-
Springtime, that's our spring goal.
We've been wanting that for years. Years. Yes.
No, we have the grant. Rod's just a little behind.
So this is the area that you said the residents really wanted,
That's what they kept bringing up, right?
amenities within the town.
Amenities
Yeah,
within the town.
besides it, yeah.
And La Fondita is expanding per se. They're going through the planning and zoning process to add a second floor and then to extend their kitchen. So they'll have some outdoor seating also with that. Well, not sure about the
Purchase the house
parking,
next door.
because it's in that neighborhood area that some of the neighbors complain about. But they are trying to. Eloise is trying to do a really good thing. She thought it was going to start by now, but I think she's bogged down a little bit in the process of getting the zoning approvals. So we're looking at that. We applied again for a business facade improvement grant from the Department of Housing, and we'll know probably in the next month on whether we get that. We did 4 last year in a program, so we are targeting some of that, like you said, in that regard. So we're trying to hit the ground running. When we get this, we'll be, that much more ammunition to go after grants and other funding opportunities that we can use.
Might be good to start documenting according to each of these 12 strategies, the things you've already done and things that are in process, and just kind of keep track, because when you get into that planning process, it'll be good to say, look,
Yeah,
look
right,
how far we've
right.
come.
Yeah, and
But
that
we
was
need your
our,
help for just that
that
last
was
little bit.
a big part of our goal was that so we could feed this right into the Port Town sector plan and make sure that whatever's covered here is included there. So we're excited about
When
it.
you,
Definitely will be ahead of the game by doing this.
Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things you didn't take much look at, I don't believe, is annexation.
No, we did not look at that.
You did not. Okay. That's okay.
What do you want to annex?
Well, over the years, there's lots of conversation about annexing Edmonston Road.
Oh, yeah, on the other
Most
side.
of
Kettleman,
Edmonston
yeah.
Road is county. When you go south about Three Brothers, it becomes Bladensburg. But when you go north, it takes a while before it gets to Riverdale Park. And so almost all of the west side of Edmonston Road between that space could be annexed,
Yeah,
potentially.
you're right. But we did not look at that, but it's an interesting point.
And that's a recommendation you might want to think about as far as the sector plan.
Yeah, the sector
Conversation
plan
doing that
proposed
process.
a whole new town center at the corner of Edmonston Road and Decatur
True.
The last
in
one,
the
yeah.
last one, and so, the cost feasibility of that,
Exactly.
was scary, and so, right.
And then
Okay.
you can revisit that and move that forward. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
a suggestion, a recommendation.
Yeah.
You always have.
the it brings, interesting challenges because there's apartment buildings along Edmonston Road, there's
True.
retail, there's construction. So, yeah, it brings some interesting. It's probably something we need to have a study done on at some point, so that we can make a decision, because it's been discussed for at least a decade. Okay, go beat me up on the walk track.
So, that day you were gonna walk track.
One of the things that stuck out for me, the possibly looking into changing some of our zoning, just to some special exceptions, because I think that the industrial area where we have a lot of auto body shops and so on, I think that's where we need to look at. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I think that's what we need to look at with the exceptions or, some zoning, that type of thing. So I really want to dig into action 1 and 2. Yeah.
I think that's
Code
the,
You
enforcement.
had mentioned it, I think I had.
I think
I've heard that before, yeah.
So you heard on that, our
Yeah.
walk, big time, didn't you?
it's the biggest elephant in the room is the zoning.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
if you're looking at Portstown and all the other municipalities around here, zoning really is going to be the biggest issue for them to actually to tackle. So that conversation can happen during the second plan process. I told them that those staff is going to be working on it. When you do that SMA, good luck, because that's the opportunity that you'll have to revisit some of that.
Okay.
Because there may be some zones that you don't particularly care for, that you can revisit that and then come up with some recommendations there.
But in preparation for the Port Towns plan, if you and your staff are very familiar with the county zoning ordinance and can say, this is the zone we're missing, if you can find something in that book of all the zoning rules that says, this would actually suit our purposes, but we don't have one of those, then at least you know what you're asking for when you get into the planning study.
Find
Yes,
it.
sir.
And we did with I was telling you about the Edmonston Collective that was going to be a makers facility that people could come and sell. They did work through our county council and did get a change made that allowed them to be at that location. The issue just further became the parking. So.
And the crazy thing is, it's there, but there's nothing we can do about it. Yeah. But, okay. Any more questions? Well,
We really appreciate working with you. It's been a great learning experience for us, and we're excited. We're ready to tackle it and get going. So when we get it, we'll get the draft back. We'll have those comments, and we'll get them back to you as soon as we possibly can.
Okay, and I will be sending that out this week. I just want to give you contact information there. My contact's the first contact there, Dan Sanders, project facilitator, and also to the website. So if you got any questions, you want to submit anything to it, you can do that. But like I said, I'm going to send you a copy of the report, so have your cookies, have your coffee, have your tea, whatever. Get ready to read. But we appreciate you. We appreciate you letting us present to you tonight.
we appreciate you, let me tell you. Yeah.
All the ideas you gave us.
But what's really gratifying is that you anticipated some of the ideas, you've already started working on some of the ideas. I mean, we don't rarely get the opportunity to see things that we recommend get implemented, so it's really great. I love hearing all the progress you've made so far.
That's true. That's the first time working on a study and some of the things have been accomplished already and we haven't even completed it. That is great. I have never worked on a study and that happened. Never.
Bunch of overachievers. Well, I appreciate how you just break everything down so it in layman's terms so that we can get it and we're able to put it into action as best we can. So kudos to you and your professionalism and smarts and wits and all of that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
So we are supposed to adjourn, but before we do, I wanted to check with the council on our next work session. It was scheduled for November 1st, but November 1st is not a good date for us. It's too soon, and it's a lot going on. So I was wondering if you want to change it to November the 8th or the 9th.
Can't
The
do the
8th.
8th here.
Election day.
You know, I knew that. No, no, I said, there's something on the, right, and I couldn't, that's it, yep. So, I suggest that we do it on the 9th at 5 p.m. for the work session and roll into 7 p.m. for, I did move it up. We used to do 5:30, but sometimes we run into our 7 o'clock. If we're done, that gives us a good break before the meeting.
Mayor, do you want to do interviews that night?
For,
Town attorney?
let's, town attorney, for town attorney. We're open the bids for town attorney, yeah.
Or do you want to do it on a different night?
No, because we're in November, and November's holiday month, then we're going into December. So, at the 5 o'clock or 7?
5.
5 o'clock, yeah. What do you guys think? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
You also want to talk about the grant program.
That's a lot,
So I think that's too much.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
a
think
lot.
we could do both.
yeah.
Okay,
So I think if anything, we should talk about the grant program first,
yeah.
and we can schedule a separate night for interviews.
You can do virtual on the interviews.
Interviews. Betsy's updating Hillary on.
I didn't read my emails today.
I kept telling her,
So let's do that. Let's concentrate on the 9th. Let's concentrate on the grant, so we can get that going and out of here and moving, and then we can schedule a separate night for the attorney interviews, if you don't mind. And it could be Zoom.
Okay.
Good. Well, it could be.
No.
It can be in person for you. I mean, we're
No, I'm just saying. I'm just tired of
we're
hearing
doing
that
both
word.
now. Oh, it'll be around for a long time.
Yeah, I think
This is it. This is the way of the world.
The, people being interviewed, any of them from the last candidate?
Potentially, it's 2 new candidates and 1 that
The
interviewed.
guy from Bowie? The attorney from Bowie? What was somebody from
No, the
Attorneys for Bowie. No,
I
women.
wrote down someone's name from the fall conference. This, one of the co-presenters represents a lot of towns.
Oh, it might have been former Jay. Gullo.
Gullo. He does it.
He does. He wrote Poolsville. He does.
Oh, really?
He does. He's got like 4 or
Oh.
5. He declined last time because
Oh,
he didn't feel he could
get over here.
Got too much under this belt.
get over here. I was somewhat selective this time in sending out the proposal request because I didn't send it to Western Maryland or to Eastern Shore.
Because of the distance.
That's
a
a
good
nice
concentration.
long ride.
It is, and
Especially in wintertime for
Right.
Western Maryland.
right. But so far I have 3 interested parties, and they're all
Kevin Best.
yes, he's one of them.
Who?
Kevin Best.
I remember that name.
You interviewed
He
him
was
last
one
time.
of the
Oh,
other
was
ones
he?
last
Oh.
time.
His issue is, I mean, we'll bring him, but in his proposal, he cannot meet on Wednesday nights. And so he would request that you change. He requested that the last time he
Yeah.
was interviewed. And
Well,
He
we
made it
went
sound
to
like he
Wednesday
had
nights from
several
Eliminator, right?
people in his
From Monday.
firm.
no, he's a single
Oh, is he?
person, and he has 5
Oh.
towns, I think, currently.
He made it sound like he had a bigger
And we haven't always been on Wednesdays.
Anyway,
Yeah, eons ago, we were Mondays.
Sue Ellen, I think,
I know,
are we off tape?
no.
Oh,
This,
Cut this off. I mean, I can.
we can adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Yeah, I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. The motion has been made, second. All in favor, please indicate.
Aye.
Aye. Adjourn.
Okay, we're off.